Okay, so what are we doing? Well, verses 5 and 6, we found out there's about a 50-year break between these verses 5 and 6. And last week we supplied you with the information that fits between these verses. Now, we're going to get into the verse. As a matter of fact, I intend on covering the whole 6th verse, which deals with one primary topic, Daniel chapter 11, verse 6. We've got several things that happen here, but it's all based around one particular event that takes place. When does this take place? Well, according to the first two words in the Hebrew text, which are Lekech Shanim, we have an indefinite reference to time. Remember what I said last week, that just because we go from verse 5 to verse 6 and it says they will do this, the they of verse 6 is not necessarily synonymous with the they of verse 5. With this skip in time between verses 5 and 6, remember that we have gone completely over the second of the Seleucid kings, completely over him, through most of the reign of the third of the Seleucid kings, and through most of the reign of the second of the Ptolemaic kings. That's important for identification purposes, in order to know who verse 6 has reference to with these personal plural pronouns of they. The end of the years, they shall join themselves together. Now, because we have this beginning phrase, Lekech Shanim, then automatically we're not to assume that the they has to be traced back to verse 5 and take us back to Ptolemy the first and Seleucus the first. I know this, you don't have to remember, you already know from this evening this class is technical. You really have to have your chart out and really be looking down at your notes to keep up with which Ptolemy and Seleucus and Antiochus we're talking about. But verse 5 is all about Ptolemy the first and Seleucus the first. Verse 6 is not about either one of those. As a matter of fact, we've skipped over the second of the Seleucid kings, who, as you see from your chart, swaps the name Seleucus for Antiochus, his grandfather, the father of the founding father of the Seleucid dynasty. But I'm majoring first of all on the first phrase to let us know when he's talking about, or to kind of answer the critical problem. Well, we know that what happens in verse 6, they tell us, never took place with Ptolemy the first and Seleucus the first in their respective reigns. And that's true, because the verses are not to be joined together like that. There is somewhat over 50-year gap, chronologically, between verse 5 and verse 6. And it doesn't say in the next thing that happened, it says, and in the end of years. Now this word, kates, as you see, it's the first word. Take off the two prefixes. It's the first word, kates. You've got a kof, seri, sadi. Q-E-T-S. Kates. Appears about 65 times in the Old Testament, most of the time being translated with the word end. E-N-D, as you have here in the end of years. The end. And it generally has reference to time. When it says end, that's all this word means here. For years, you have to go into the next word. But just for end, we have kates. Generally refers to end with reference to time, therefore chronologically, such as in Genesis chapter 6 and verse 13, where God told Noah the what of all flesh? The end of all flesh. Well, he means chronologically the end, and you can look it up. We don't have the time to look up all of these references, but I'm sure we'll look up one just to satisfy everyone, then I won't look up the rest of these to satisfy you. Genesis 6:13, that the same word is found here, which just will serve to give you more practice of locating these things. Chapter 6, verse 13, well, it stands right out there in the middle of the page to you, kates. And as a matter of fact, you have it by itself here without a double prefix, which makes it easier to spot. Fourth word, over from the right, beginning of verse 13. Genesis 6:13, Kates, the end of all flesh has come before me. It's found also in Exodus 12 and verse 41. We always, or generally, maybe always, but at least generally I'll say, to be on the safe side, give you these references. That's just for research purposes, so you've got references that have the word to bear out the meaning of it as we're giving you a meaning. End with reference to time. Exodus 12 and verse 41. At the end, you'll find there, after this 430-year period, that they've been down in Egypt. This is talking about the Exodus account in Exodus 12 and verse 41. It's found in Lamentations 4 and verse 18. It's found in Isaiah 9 and verse 7. Isaiah 9:7. Isaiah 9:6 is the messianic prophecy of the Son and the child, the Prince of Peace and so forth, and it said, and of his kingdom and his government there will be no end. E-N-D. So we know he's talking about time. But again, you can look that up in Isaiah 9:7 and find the same reference case. Rarely does it refer to geography, but on at least a couple of occasions that I've found, it does have reference to geography. We will look these up in the English Bible. 2 Kings 19:23. The Hebrew word kates. 2 Kings 19:23. To find where it has reference to geography. In other words, the end of a parcel of land or the end of a piece of territory or something. Now, I think here it's going to be translated, as in some other places, with the word border. Well, that's a good translation. A border is the end, then. 2 Kings 19:23. By thy messengers thou hast reproached the Lord, and hast said, with the multitude of my chariots, I am come up to the height of the mountains, to the sides of Lebanon, will cut down the tall cedar trees thereof, the choice fir trees thereof. This is during the time of Hezekiah. And I will enter into the lodgings of his borders, and into the forest of his Carmel. Mount Carmel, a reference, symbolic reference to Mount Carmel. So borders there. Jeremiah 50 and verse 26. I don't remember how it's translated there. It could be borders again. And then there's an interesting time where it's used in a mining passage in Job 28:3. Well, it's translated end here. Job 28:3. He setteth an end to darkness, and searcheth out all perfection, the stones of darkness and the shadow of death. Well, the stones of darkness, it's a reference here to mining operations. The stones of darkness would be stones down in the ground in a mining process. Silver, gold, iron, brass, and so forth. The first couple of verses. It talks about there being a vein of silver, so you know he's talking about mining the earth for her precious metals and elements. So on a couple of occasions it refers to geography. It's used more times in the book of Daniel than any other Old Testament book, and more times in the 11th chapter than any other chapter. So as we give you these words, then there's no need to cover them again in this chapter. Daniel 11 and verse 13. The king of the south shall return, and shall set forth a multitude greater than the former, shall certainly come after certain years with a great army and with much riches. Verse 27, verse 35. Verse 35, it's the time of the end. Verse 40, it's the time of the end. And then the last verse, verse 45. He will come to his end. Chronologically, he will come to his end. If you see your reference, you have to go to your marginal reference there in verse 13. We'll have to do that a couple of times here in verse 6, but really not for this work. It says after certain years, which is a good translation. There's no problem. You don't have to, in other words, you don't have to put in end. I might as well point that out because this is really what we're going to come back to in verse 6. You see your marginal reference there to verse 13 is at the end of times, even years. So you get the word end in from Kates, Whereas just in the text you have after certain years. Well, certain just means, well, it's a fixed number, but, it's indefinite from our point of view. It's fixed whenever it comes to pass. Now, this exact phrase of Kate's Shanim is found one other time in the Bible in 2 Chronicles 18 in verse 2. And why don't we look this up in both Bibles? 2 Kings 18:2. You even have the second of the two prefixes that we found there in Daniel 11:6. You even find that here. Page 1538. 2 Chronicles 18:2. Hebrew Bible. We've all got the same one. Page 1538. We're looking for this exact same phrase, Laket Shanim, just to see how it's used in other places and where. Now, in the English Bible, we have this. Jehoshaphat had riches, honor, and abundance, and joined affinity with Ahab. And after certain years, and you see certain is in italics, and you've got a reference in the margin, at the end of years. Well, that's the literal translation. And at the end of years, Jehoshaphat went down to Ahab to Samaria. But after certain years, here again, certain, it really means indefinite. I know the words are just the opposite, but it means after a certain number of years. How many we really don't know right now, until you can do some other studies. But if you go to your Hebrew Bible, you'll see this in 2 Chronicles 18, verse 2, the second and third word. Do you see the two words, Laket Shanim, joined together? Now that's the same, except over in Daniel 11 and verse 6, you have another prefix on the beginning of the first word, Ulaket Shanim, and here you just have Laket Shanim. So, what does it refer to here in Daniel 11:6? It refers to an indefinite time period that must, if possible, be determined by the context. The end of years, it doesn't tell you, it doesn't put a number, an ordinal or a cardinal numeral to how many years, and it came to pass afterwards, And that's really different Hebrew words, but that's what it means. It came to pass later on, the end of years. How many? Well, you must determine that, if it's even possible. That must be determined from the context. Now, you really can't get it just from the context unless you know some extra biblical history, because you study the context of Daniel 11, verses 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, however far you want to go past that or before that. And if you don't know what he's talking about there, how can you figure out how many years he has reference to? But you can get this over here on your chart, because you'll see Daniel 11:6 and where it fits in time-wise. It's after a period of 50 years. It came to pass after a certain period of years at the end of those years. It's an end because it's fixed in the mind of God. It's indefinite because we don't know what it has reference to until either it comes to pass or he reveals it to us by the Spirit. So all of that has been said to our liberal foes. We don't have any liberal ones here. Why cover that? Well, so you'll know. Amen. All said to our liberal foes, because they say, well, this never happened to these kings in verse 5. Well, the angel never said it would happen. He said something happened here in verse 5. We've got the rise of Ptolemy and Seleucus number 1, and then in the end of years, later on, past their time, then we have the events of verse 6 unfolding. Okay, let's come to the rest of verse 6. Or specifically, the rest of the first half. The verse is neatly divided in two more or less equal halves. So let's come to this phrase, shall join themselves, or they shall join themselves together. We know thus far it's going to come to pass in the end of years in an indefinite period of time. We know from extra-biblical history about how long that time was, somewhat over 50 years. So if it's over 50 years, then the they couldn't possibly refer back to Ptolemy the first and Seleucus the first, only to descendants that come upon the throne after them. Therefore, the use of this plural personal pronoun is legitimate, because they speaks of they in the bodily form of their descendants. Shall join themselves together. This means to make a political league, or a pact, or an alliance. This is a political alliance, which is often done between warring nations as a ceasefire. Remember, we're talking about antagonistic nations, Syria and Egypt. So they shall join themselves together. Marginal shall associate themselves. That makes no difference. Join, associate is the same thing. How is it to be consummated, this political alliance? By a politically expedient marriage that was designed by Ptolemy II. His daughter was to marry the king of the north. Now this is frequently seen throughout history, as well as in the Bible, which gives the stories about the history of the past, where you've got daughters and sons of various monarchs being married off to one another in order to make a political alliance between the two nations. Now, we don't exactly do that in the United States. I mean, the daughter of one president then doesn't marry the son of a Canadian president or something, so the countries are joined together. But it is found in the Bible. If you turn over to 1 Kings, it was found in ancient history. It was found in history not so ancient. I mean, just think back the last, more than 1,000 years. The European powers, up until fairly recent times, such as the French and the Germans, they married off daughters and sons and made alliances. That's how you end up with the king. That's the king of both Scotland and France and England all at the same time. It's because all these bloodlines from these various kings and queens have been spread around by these politically expedient marriages. So it's something that's rather well known. Pompey, as a matter of fact, we can go back over 2,000 years. Pompey married Julia, the daughter of Julius Caesar. It was a politically expedient marriage to help the problems of the first Roman triumvirate, which didn't do much to help the problem. It's found, for instance, a case of it is found in 1 Kings chapter 16. Then we'll turn to another passage that will give you just a little light into Old Testament history. Well, this will as well, but maybe you were more familiar with this than the other case. That is the underlying politics of the other case. 1 Kings 16 and verse 31. It came to pass, as if it had been a light thing for Ahab, him, to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. If that wasn't enough, then he did worse than that. He took to wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Zidonians, these Phoenician pagans. He marries the daughter of the king of the Zidonians, or of this important Phoenician city, Tyre and Zidon, and went and served Baal or Baal and worshipped him. Now, why do you think he married the daughter of another king? Well, obviously it's for political reasons. It's not because they're in love. It's never because people are in love. It's because of political reasons to join these two nations together. Now, this is the king now. This is the king in Judah. What famous king in Judah is known for this above just about everyone? Solomon. Why in the world do you think Solomon married all of those women? Turn over to 1 Kings chapter 11. Now, a lot of people know about Solomon's wives, but they don't really know about Solomon and his wives. He didn't just pick up a lot of women. They were married under the threat of political expediency. 1 Kings chapter 11. But King Solomon loved many strange women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, well, probably of the Moabite king, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites. Of the nations concerning which the Lord said to the children of Israel, you shall not go unto them, neither shall they come in unto you, for surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. And Solomon clave unto these in love. Turn back to chapter 3. Solomon certainly didn't love each one of these women in any biblical sense individually. You can't love 1,000 wives all at the same time. He's loving the carnal aspect and the political aspect of all of this. Now, you couldn't ask for a better proof text than chapter 3 and verse 1. This is what this verse is all about, what Solomon's many marriages were all about. So this throws, you see, a little light as we study Daniel upon other things in Old Testament history.
Amen. That
was concerning the Seleucids and the Ptolemies, but it happened in Israel. Solomon made affinity with Pharaoh, king of Egypt. They made a political league or pact or alliance, exactly what we're talking about in Daniel 11:6. He made an affinity with Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And we're on the question concerning the Seleucids and the Ptolemies, and how was this affinity consummated? The same way in which the affinity between Solomon and Pharaoh was consummated. And he took Pharaoh's daughter and brought her into the city of David. Built her own house and her own tabernacle and her own religious shrines and everything. How is it consummated? By getting together a son or a daughter from one of these monarchs, join them together in marriage, and that consummates this political pact or league or alliance that these people have in their mind anyway. So this is exactly what we have going on in Daniel 11:6. Antiochus, who's 23 years younger than Ptolemy II, marries Ptolemy's daughter. It's a common practice. It's not atypical at all. There's nothing strange in what we have here in Daniel 11 and verse 6. Now, a comment, first of all, then we'll give you a complete history of this first half of the verse, upon this word agreement. You see in your margin you have that the Hebrew gives rights, R-I-G-H-T-S. Well, the Hebrew word is mesharim, as you can find there in your Hebrew Bible, mesharim, which literally means uprightness. And in the Old Testament, it's a synonym for the term righteousness. For instance, it's found in Proverbs 1 and verse 3, which is kind of mistranslated in the King James Version as equities. It's plural there, equities. Which equity can mean a lot of different things. But the word is a synonym for righteousness, and it means uprightness. They shall join themselves together, and they shall make an agreement. So in other words, the Hebrew literally says, and they shall make an uprightness, or they shall make a righteousness. That's why you got in your margin rights. So why in the world would a word like this be used? Probably for the following reason. The marriage would fulfill the terms of the agreement and thus make matters right or just by causing a peaceable alliance to follow. Probably the best suggestion why this particular word, mesharim, is used. Because the marriage would fulfill the terms of the agreement. The political alliance comes first, but it's consummated by this typical politically expedient marriage. Fulfill the terms of the agreement and thus make matters just or acceptable or right or righteous or upright by causing a peaceable alliance to follow. They could have had an alliance, but without a marriage, without flesh and blood to help consummate it and seal it, well, maybe it wouldn't be very peaceable shortly thereafter. Of course, God, in His sovereign control, is going to make it very non-peaceable in a hurry because of some of the things that take place. They shall join themselves together, the king's daughter of the south, that's the daughter of Ptolemy the second, Ptolemy Philadelphus, shall come to the king of the north, that's Antiochus the second, the third of the Seleucid kings, to make an agreement. An agreement is an acceptable translation. Well, I'm just giving you what it literally says, an uprightness or righteousness. So here exactly in this first half of the verse is what takes place. After a half a century of fighting, the two kingdoms sign a ceasefire by making an alliance. It's all under the instigation of Ptolemy II. As we know from history, and he and his daughter come first here in the verse. The king of the north, Antiochus II, the Seleucid king, comes after that. Antiochus II divorces his present wife, Laodice. Laodice. You'll have to know that because the wars that start up afterwards are named for this woman, Laodice. Laodice. That was the former legitimate wife of Antiochus II. But in order to marry the daughter of the king of the south, he divorces Laodice, who had borne to him two sons, one by the name of Antiochus, one by the name of Seleucus. Get both of the dynastic names in. He divorces her in order to marry the daughter of Ptolemy II, whose name was Berenice. Laodice was his first wife. Berenice is his second wife, the one he takes after divorcing Laodice, and Berenice is the daughter of King Ptolemy II. Berenice. All of this takes place in the year 252 BC. She comes up from Egypt with great pomp and ceremony, with many attendants, spices, riches, camels, caravan, the whole works. Remember that because that will become important later in the verse. She comes from Egypt up to Syria in the year 252 to marry Antiochus II, who of course had just divorced his first wife, Laodice. Okay, and look what you have on your chart. Daniel 11:6 fits under the end of the reign of both Ptolemy II and Antiochus II. And they even have specified the date 252, the middle of the chart over to the far left-hand side. Under 252, you have Antiochus II married Berenice, daughter of Ptolemy II. Do we all see that on your chart? That's what the first half of verse 6 is all about. This politically expedient marriage that consummates or serves to seal and make right this political alliance or pact or league that has been made between these two kings. So in other words, for the first time, we really have agreeable peace now between the nations. You see earlier, 275, and I've given you some other dates where you have warfare going on. It was certainly not continual warfare, but a state of war always had existed up till this time between the nations after we get past, of course, the founding fathers who have been friends and one worked under the other in former times. Okay, with that, let's take the first half of the verse and read it through and now see if we have a total understanding of what we're talking about, and then we'll go on to the second half. In the end of the years, an indefinite period of time, or it shall come about after a certain period of time, they, Ptolemy II, Antiochus II, shall join themselves together. And here's what seals their togetherness. Ptolemy II's daughter, Berenice, shall come to Antiochus II to make an agreement, or to make the alliance which has already been made, make it right or upright or just. And all of this takes place in the year 252 BC. Okay, we all have that. Let's go on to the second half, take up the rest of our time tonight, the second half of the verse, which gives us the problems of the marriage. The problems of this marriage alliance between Ptolemy II and Antiochus II, or between Antiochus II and Berenice, because Berenice is the woman he's going to marry. A lot of catastrophic events take place after this because it's an unholy marriage, and God's eyes, are beholding this unholy marriage. He's divorcing his legitimate wife to take another wife for no other reason except it's politically expedient at this time. So shortly after, they've got about 6 years here. They've got both of the kings dying, at exactly the same time. Really, they don't. Ptolemy II dies a little bit before Antiochus II. I won't argue as far as those dates are concerned, 246, 246 on your chart. But don't think they both died on, April the 3rd or something. They may have died in the same year, but Ptolemy II in the first of the year, and Antiochus II towards the end of the year. That has to happen, as we know from history, for other events to unfold, and for the second half of Daniel 11:6 to be true.
For the
died in the same year, but Ptolemy II in the first of the year, and Antiochus II towards the end of the year. That has to happen, as we know from history, for other events to unfold, and for the second half of Daniel 11:6 to be true. So shortly after, they have about 6 years after this marriage alliance, Ptolemy II, who remember is the instigator of everything that has taken place thus far. It's not the idea of Berenice, it's not the idea of Antiochus II, it's certainly not the idea of Laodice for all this to take place. It's the idea of Ptolemy II. We'll explain why here in a moment. But shortly afterwards, Ptolemy II, the instigator of it all, dies. Now, whenever he dies, this sets into motion a whole series of these catastrophic events that result in just about everyone's death by the time we get through with the verse. It appears that the reason why Ptolemy did this is that in a roundabout way, he's trying to gain control of the Seleucid Empire. But he wants to do it apart from warfare. What's a good, sneaky way? Well, have that king marry your daughter and get rid of his legitimate wife. Therefore, the only heirs, the only legitimate after this, the only legitimate heirs to the throne will have Ptolemaic blood flowing through their veins because they'll come through this union of Antiochus II and not Laodice, his first wife, but Berenice. You understand what I'm saying? So then he's got his children, more or less, Ptolemy II's children, on the throne there in the Syrian or the Seleucid Empire. So in a roundabout, sneaky way, it seems like this is warfare. But it's psychological warfare. It's not physical warfare. He's working here on the mind of Antiochus II, get him to divorce his first wife and marry Berenice with a name like that. She doesn't sound very beautiful, but maybe she was. Whatever was the attraction, they end up married. And she's going to produce children, and those children will come to the throne. Because, of course, Laodice at this time is, an outcast. She's banished now because she's no longer his wife. So let's take a look now at the confusing terminology here at the end of the verse. Now here's the whole list of everything that will happen if you want to write this down. She shall not retain the power of the arm. I'll supply in some words that are obviously understood here, because maybe one verb has reference to several objects or subjects here. She shall not retain the power of the arm. He shall not stand or retain the power of his arm. She shall be given up. They that brought her shall be given up. He that begat her shall be given up. And he that strengthened her in these times shall be given up. Now there's the whole list of what happens, as you can read for yourself all in the end of the verse. A whole series of one thing after another that takes place as soon as Ptolemy dies. She shall not retain the power of the arm. He shall not retain the power of the arm, nor stand. She shall be given up. They that brought her shall be given up. He that begat her shall be given up. And he that strengthened her in these times shall be given up. Now you see, when you just read that and you don't know anything about history, you don't know what that's talking about. Not retain the power of the arm, and they'll be given up, and he that begat her, and those that begot her, and he that begat that, and they'll all going to be given up. Well, what in the world is this talking about? Well, this is our series of problems that we have that we'll take one at a time. First of all, she shall not retain the power of the arm. She shall not retain the power of the arm. The term arm in Scripture many times is a symbol whenever it's used in a symbolic sense. Many times is a symbol for help or assistance. Just like the term horn, such as a horn on a beast or the horns of the altar, is invariably a symbol for strength or might or power in Scripture. The arm is a symbol of help or assistance. Now you have to know how you see these various terms are used when they're used in a symbolic sense. And you can trace this consistently throughout the Old Testament as well. Let's take a few references for our point of view. Isaiah chapter 59 and verse 1, we'll take some that refer to God to begin with. Isaiah chapter 59 and verse 1. I think here we'll have hand, but we'll get to some more specific ones here in a moment. But the idea is the same here. The word is different. It's hand and not arm, but hand in this context has the same symbolic meaning as does arm, concerning help or assistance. Behold, the Lord's hand is not shortened that it can't save, help, or give you assistance. But does God have any hands? Of course not. That's a reference to his assistance or his help. The Lord's hand is not shortened that it cannot save. Exodus 15 and verse 16. The triumphal praise after they've been delivered. The children of Israel have been delivered from the Egyptians and crossed the Red Sea. Chapter 15 of Exodus and verse 16. Fear and dread shall fall upon them. He's speaking now of the inhabitants in Palestine. The Egyptians and Pharaoh have already been dealt with. Fear and dread shall fall upon them. By the greatness of thine arm they shall be as still as a stone. Till thy people pass over, O Lord, till the people pass over which thou hast purchased. By the greatness of your assistance or of your help. That's all the word arm. And you see the Hebrews are very fond of using very graphic ways of speaking and writing. You know what your arm does. You stretch out your arm and grab that child as he's drowning. What is your arm? Your arm's not your arm. It's assistance. It's life-saving help and assistance to that individual. So remember what this means as we're going to get back to Daniel here in a moment. Then back to the book of Isaiah, Isaiah 51 and verse 9. Isaiah 51 and verse 9. Awake, awake, put on strength, O arm of the Lord. Awake as in the ancient days, in the generations of old. Awake, arm of the Lord, to give your people help and assistance. Then, this will be interesting to you, 2 Chronicles 32 and verse 8. We'll go to some references to man as such. 2 Chronicles 32:8. Be strong and courageous, be not afraid nor dismayed for the king of Assyria, nor for all the multitude that is with him, for there are more that be with us than with him. With him is an arm of flesh, but with us is the arm of God. That's the implication here. To help us to fight our battles, The people rested themselves upon the words of Hezekiah, king of Judah, with him as an arm of flesh. And then how about that famous reference in Jeremiah 17:5? Thus saith the Lord, cursed be the man that trusteth in man, and maketh flesh his arm. Maketh flesh the source of his help or of his assistance, whose heart departeth from the Lord. Jeremiah 17, verse 5. So you see, even here in a famous passage for charismatics, you have to understand a little bit of symbolism to know what he's talking about, or really to get a deeper understanding. We know he means don't trust in man. But he said, cursed be the man that trusteth in man, and then he goes on for another comment, and that maketh flesh his arm. That is, his source of help or his source of assistance. So with that in mind, back to Daniel 11:6. She shall not retain, not obtain, she already has it, but retain means keep it. She shall not retain the power of the arm. She, obviously, the reference is to Berenice. That's who the whole verse is about, this marriage between Antiochus II and Berenice. She, Berenice, will not be able to continue assisting via this marriage contract the unity of the two nations, which is why she was married to begin with, was to help bring about some tangible unity between these Seleucids and the Ptolemies. When it says that she shall not retain the power of the arm, she's going to lose her ability to serve as assistance in this mediating position between the country of Syria and the country of Egypt, between those two respective kingdoms. Why? Because something happens. Why doesn't she retain this? Because as soon as Ptolemy II dies, the instigator of it all, Antiochus takes this opportunity to divorce Berenice and take back Laodice, which means that Berenice loses that position she had with the power of the arm. She loses that mediating position that she had by means of the marriage contract, where she could help unify the two nations. She shall not retain the power of the arm, because Antiochus divorces her and takes back Laodice, his first wife. So that is exactly what that phrase means. But she shall not retain the power of the arm. That's what it means, as well as an explanation of how and why and when it happened. Neither, let's come to another phrase if we're all ready, neither shall he stand nor his arm. Now stand is a little bit different than just having power of the arm. It does mention his arm. He shall not stand, nor shall he retain the power of the arm. It just has it in a shortened form with 3 words, nor his arm. So you'd first of all have to take the end phrase, nor his arm, or the power of his arm. Who is the he here then? Well, Antiochus II. He is going to lose his position of help and assistance. And he's going to lose it by not being able to stand. When you fall, you fail to stand, that represents death. So he would lose his ability to be of any help because he's no longer alive. He dies. How does this happen? Well, now that Laodice has been taken back to Antiochus, she fears the fickleness of her husband. If he did it to me once, maybe he can do it to me again. Jerome even said that her husband was of an unstable mind. Maybe he was. I guess you would be to divorce your wife and marry someone else, and then when her father dies, divorce her and take your first wife back. So Laodice is a fairly intelligent woman here. She's been snubbed once, and she doesn't want to go through that again. And so she poisons Antiochus II. That's what this phrase means. He will not have the power of his arm. He won't be of any help to anyone because he's 6 feet under. He won't stand. He'll fall. His wife poisons him. In the year 246 BC. Obviously, all this takes place in a relatively short period of time, but nevertheless it has to take place after the death of Ptolemy II. Okay, are you with me so far? She shall not retain the power of the arm, Berenice, neither shall he stand nor his arm, Antiochus II, but she shall be given up. Well, the she is back to the same one who was not going to retain the power of the arm. Well, she's been divorced. That's how she lost the power of the arm. But to be given up is something a little more dreadful, and it's synonymous with falling or failing or not being able to stand. Laodice then coerces her son, Seleucus, into slaying Berenice because of the relationship she had had with her husband. She had gone to take refuge at the temple of Daphne, and Seleucus, the son of Laodice, traced her down that far and murdered her. She shall be given up. Remember what's so characteristic of this part of Daniel 11? The personal pronouns. She and he over and over and over and over. You have to know who these she's and he's are. Okay, so there are, about 3 of the problems dealt with so far. Ptolemy II is dead. Antiochus II is dead. Berenice is dead. See, everyone dies here at the end. This next phrase, the 4th problem that we have, the 4th result that comes from the death of Ptolemy II, the instigator, they that brought her. Now, the verb given up also applies to this group of people. They that brought her. Who were the they that brought her? Well, that's that entourage that I told you before. She came up with great pomp and ceremony. With, whenever a king's daughter is sent to marry another king, she's sent with maids and stewards and butlers and all types of things. She's not sent up there alone or something. She's got all of her maids and the people who make her clothes for and perfume her and comb her hair. She's got an entire entourage of people going with her from Egypt up to Syria. And just because she's married the king, they don't then all turn around and go back home. They're with her there for life. As far as they're concerned, they're there for life. Because she has to have these maids and butlers and cooks and stewards and everyone else to make up her part of the Seleucid court, Antiochus II making up the other half. So that means also that all of these people are slain by the instigation of Laodice. She's eradicating any remnant of the Ptolemies in the Seleucid Empire. So all of her nannies and cooks and butlers are murdered under the instigation of Laodice as well. They that brought her shall be given up. Then, in the 5th and the 6th place, the last 2 references we have in completing this verse, these are the only 2 that present a little bit of a problem. The 5th one more than the 6th one. Your Bible has, he that begat her. Your margin has, whom she begat. So, in other words, it definitely has to refer either to her father or to her son. That is, of Berenice. You see that in the end of verse 6. He that begat her shall be given up. Again, the same verb, shall be given up, goes along with this phrase as well. He that begat her, that would be her father. That would be Ptolemy II. Your margin has, whom she brought forth, or whom she begat, that would be her son, which would be the grandson of Ptolemy II. For this, let's jump down into the CA at the bottom of the page. I skipped over all of these other technical references down in the CA. I heard someone said the other night, whenever I said one time turn to the CA, he said, what book is that? Is that a new book they're looking at? CA, got to go back to textual criticism. It means a critical apparatus. Whenever we studied Daniel Bomberg's Hebrew edition of the Bible and all these various editions of the Hebrew Bible, and the Greek as well, the Greek versions of the New Testament, we talked about a critical apparatus, that you'd want a Bible with a critical apparatus that goes with it. If you got Greek New Testaments, the reliable ones will have a CA with them. Most of the time down as footnotes at the bottom of the page. Okay, so what do we have here? We've got letter D. And we've got the word ha-yol-da. And then we've got a long explanation, and I don't guess I'll go into a lot of detail about down at the bottom. So you'll have to find, first of all, verse 6. That's the bold-faced 6. Then you've got A, B, C. We skipped all of those references. They don't change, in other words, the meaning of the passage. Then we come to D. You see D starts with MS, manuscript. Then that's Septuagint. Then it gives you what the Septuagint has. Then it gives you Syriac, Vulgate, what the Vulgate has. Then the PRB is what you're always going to be looking for. It means probably, and they give you a different reference. Now you're going to have to go back up. We're talking to go back up into your text to find the word that you have in your text. This is a Masoretic word. Be the first, second, third, fourth line down. And the fourth word over from the right. Starts with a vav. You can drop the vav. That's a prefix. We're only concerned about the rest of the word. Ha-yol-da. Ha-yol-da. Which means a begator, one who begat. Instead of begotten, one who is begotten. Okay, you see that word, and now you know your vowel points and so forth. You look at that a moment and get yourself familiar with what the consonants and vowels are, ha-yol-da. Then you go down back into your CA and look for the probably word. And you have yalda, just a simple word, yalda, which has reference to a son, to one who is begotten, a son, and not to the one who begot. That would be the father. So, we got two different choices. We've got father, that would be the father of Berenice. We've got son, that would be the son of Berenice. Here, just for your own reference sake, what various people and versions and committees and so forth have thought about the verse. First of all, a few commentators will start with the father position, that the word should be ha-yol-da. By the way, notice that we have a comets hey de gesh. You see how it ends that with a comets hey de gesh. Well, you got that in both, whether we take father or son, a comets hey de gesh, which is something that you've just learned now in Hebrew. Anyway, back to the suggestion that it should stand as the Masoretic text has it. E.J. Young and Walford are two commentators that take the father view. As far as Bible translations, the ASV, the Emphasized Bible, the Jewish Publication Society Bible, the Tercentenary Bible, and the NASB. The NASB, the New American Standard Bible, has, of all things, one who sired her, which I think is a little crude to have in a Bible translation. It sounds like horses, one who sired her. That's a little profane, but that's what the NASB has. So the NASB has adopted the father position, which is what the Masoretic text has. Now concerning the son position, commentators, Wood, Albert Barnes, take the son position. Ancient versions, Theodotion, which you're familiar with. Symmachus translation you're familiar with. The Peshitta, we haven't really gotten to. The Syriac, we haven't really gotten to in lit class. The Vulgate. Modern versions, RSV takes it as son, so we just have Yalda instead of Ha-Yolda. Jerusalem Bible, Moffat, Berkeley, Basic English, New American. And the NIV goes along with NASB taking father, although NIV doesn't have sired her, as NASB has, but NIV has a footnote. The footnote gives son as opposed to father. So we ask ourselves the question, which is it? And to ask ourselves the question, which is it, we have to ask ourselves the question, what's the most logical answer here as far as father or son? Son. The father's already dead. The father's death is what brought about this series of events that we have here. So we're going to go with the amended edition down in the CA of your Bible, and therefore we'll take the King James marginal reference here. We're going to go with the son position and not the father position. We've got some authorities on our side, and I guess more authorities against us. If you look high enough and far enough, you're going to find a lot of people that will stay with just what the King James has given you. Although, as I've given you here, most of the modern versions are taking the alternative position. So I really don't think it's going to be her father, because Ptolemy II has already died earlier. And Berenice's misfortune brings the ruin of everyone else that's involved with her. I guess one of the most significant things to remember here when you're trying to choose between father and son would be to remember this, that the important thing as far as Laodice is concerned is that no male heir from the union of Antiochus II and Berenice is allowed to exist. That obviously would be the first thing that would come to my mind. When I can see this woman is killing her husband, is having her husband's former wife killed. What if there's a son still? And there was. What if, or we wouldn't have this reference here, the son that was begotten by Berenice in her union with Antiochus II. Why kill everyone else and leave that heir there who has Ptolemaic blood in him? He's half Ptolemaic, he's half Seleucid. That wouldn't be very wise. So Laodice wants to make certain that no one except one of her two sons, either Antiochus or Seleucus, and we see that it's going to be Seleucus will come to the throne. The next one to the Seleucid throne, and not one who's half Ptolemaic. So we'll strike out the phrase, that begat her, and take he whom she brought forth. Or if you just want to get real understandable, just say her son. Drop out all the begets and the begats and begotten of. Just say her son. So he that begat her, no, we'll change to he that was begotten of her, namely her son, the son of Berenice and Antiochus II. And then finally, and sixthly, the end of the verse, here's someone else who's going to be given up. He that strengthened her in these times. These is in italics, it's been supplied. It's okay to supply it, but change the first E to an O, and it really makes a little better sense to me. He that strengthened her in those times. This is all past now. So in those times, he that strengthened her. Another one that's difficult, another one that can't be determined from a CA or looking at words, you're just going to have to take a guess. Some people have said that it's her father. We're still talking about Berenice, he that strengthened her in those times. When some of these things are taking place here, someone strengthened her. Some people have suggested her father. I don't think that makes a lot of sense because his death happened before all of this took place. Others have suggested an unknown helping figure. There are about 3 suggestions here, which doesn't make a lot of sense because we'd have no earthly idea of who that is, no reference to him at all. A third solution, which is what I would go along with, it probably is another reference back to Antiochus II. A final mentioning by the angel of his death, so the angel can move on to the next king, as we'll pick up in verse 7. So her husband was the one who strengthened her in the times of the marriage alliance and the years that followed afterwards. Of course, until he divorces her, and then he's not strengthening her anymore. But who else could it be? It's not her son. It's not her father. It's not some unknown individual. If it's unknown, then that's exactly what it is, unknown to us. Someone, a he, strengthened her in those times. It's our proposal that this would be another reference to her former husband, Antiochus II.
My heart and voice Lord.